I keep thinking of this phrase, so I'm going to share it with you here. God without religion. Amen. And I think that's really what this is all about. Not this channel or this conversation, but I think reality is about recognizing the fact that we are in a creation, in a simulation. Now, it's certainly a trendy topic right now amongst a lot of different thought leaders to go on and on about how none of this is actually real. And I've got to admit, those ideas have been plaguing my mind for, well over a decade now. But I've come to the point where just because I know the truth for myself, it's not exactly something that's liberating. They say the truth shall set you free. And that's usually the case. But I think when you see the simulation and you know and you believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that nothing around us is real except for possibly what's inside, something quite disturbing has at least happened to me. And I don't know if it's happening to you, but I can only assume that there's other people out there going through the same difficulty as I am. And that's that once, you've accepted deism, if you believe in God, assuming you do, and you realize that none of the religions get it right because they're all man-made, just a different interpretation of what we're actually going through on it is a very individual level. What I see and believe and the truth is in the eye of the beholder is probably extremely different from what you're seeing and believing. Now, we might have some similarities, and that's why we might be able to come together here. And that's why I think some of my videos are resonating with people, because you're kind of feeling and saying the same things, which is great. But it's no guarantee, and we're all on different levels. And the level I'm on lately is that the realization of the simulation and the fact that none of this is real has become so prevalent in my life that I can't get any satisfaction from anything anymore. And if I do catch a fleeting glimpse of something that pleases me, I'm immediately hit with the fact that it's not going to last long. And the second I realize that, poof, there goes my enjoyment right out the window. Whether it's playing guitar or hiking through the woods or enjoying a day at the beach with my family or, sitting here doing these kind of videos, I'm thinking about it right now. The fact that all of this physical reality isn't really even here because we don't get to take any of it with us. And when you really, truly realize that fact, it starts to take over, at least it has in my life. It starts to take over every waking moment, which is not a very comfortable thing to experience. Now, I've got a pretty amazing job. I'm not going to get into the details with you here. I get to fly out to New York a few times a year and pretend like I'm some sort of successful person. And on the outside, I'm sure to a lot of people, I project that lie. And a lot of us do. Because if nothing really exists, success and failure, all of it, none of it really exists. They're all just concepts. But on the outside, I've got a nice car, I've got a decent house, I've got an awesome job. I get to do things that probably look to other people like fun and success. But I've come to the realization, like a lot of people have, that it's meaningless. All is vanity, if you want to get ecclesiastical. Maybe that's something that he really understood. It's actually my favorite book of the Bible. I know I talk trash about organized religion constantly, but I've got a Bible. I've got a really nice little zip-up Bible that smells like leather. It's really cool. It's King James though, so it's pretty hard to read. It's like chewing gravel. But anyway, even though I appear successful and happy, it couldn't be farther from the truth. You know, satisfied, on track. You know, I've got my stuff together. I don't think anybody really has their stuff together. And if they do, they're probably living in a dream world, which is the world of physical reality. But that gets me thinking, you know, a lot of why the hell are we here? If we don't get to take any of this with us. Some people believe you don't even get to take your consciousness with you. When you die, it just fades to black and you exist no more. Well, I just don't believe that. I'm incapable of believing that. I know some of you are capable of believing that, and you believe it so much that you're willing to defend it, and you get offended when people say that there is an afterlife, and I just don't understand that. I'm hardwired. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm hardwired to believe that there is an afterlife and that we're going to come out the other side thinking that this is the dream, because I do believe that. I don't know if you've listened to a lot of those NDE experiences on YouTube. They're fantastic videos, near-death experience videos. And a lot of the people who experience those things come out on the other side saying that when they were there in the spirit world or another dimension or whatever you want to call it, their individuality, their personhood, their experiences that they had here in this realm on Earth basically ceased to exist. Now, some people are okay with that. Some people aren't. And I mean cease to exist in the idea that it didn't really happen. It was more like a dream, and that's what we're living in right now is a dream world. Some people think we even agreed to come here. And that we're not really allowed to remember life before this life. Some people claim they can remember it. Some people claim that they've lived 1,000 lifetimes before. Some people claim that we're all just one consciousness and that there's only really one of us. All the humans on Earth are just one spirit experiencing itself on a fractalized, marginalized persona that's broken up into a billion pieces. That's probably a terrible way of explaining it. There are people out there that are much better than I am at trying to vocalize these kind of thoughts. If I don't get to take my memories with me, if I can't remember my wife and my kids and my dog and my experiences, then I think that I'm going to be pretty upset about that. And it makes me wonder, what do we get to keep? What do we get to take with us? And the only thing I can truly think of that we might be able to take with us, assuming that my instincts are correct, that there is an afterlife and that we do go on, the only thing we get to take with us is consciousness itself. Which is kind of strange and disturbing to think about. I mean, I wouldn't want to wake up after death and just have be blind and deaf and be existing there in the ethers, so to speak. That gives me anxiety. I don't want to accept that as the reality. Now, thankfully, the people that have supposedly crossed over and come back to tell us about it say that there are, they get to be reunited with their family members, and there are entities over there that might represent God or gods or spirits, angels, whatever you want to call them. I don't presume to know what's over there because I've never seen it myself. And I think it's idiotic to assume that any of us really know what's over there unless you've seen it yourself, because seeing sometimes usually believing, depends. Forgive me if I've talked about this before, but I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I was coming back from a music store from like Louisville, Kentucky, riding around with my friend Bart in his pickup truck, listening to Metallica. And just out of the blue, and it's never happened since, I had a full blown vision, an actual vision. And I mean, this wasn't something I just was thinking about, like a thought popped into my head. This was a visual thing, like a blue screen dropped down in front of my eyes, and I saw this blueprint. That's the best way I can describe it. It started off as a blue screen with a line drawn depiction of a man and a woman splitting off and having children and offspring, and those kids split off and had offspring. And from there, I don't really remember where it went, but it turned into this full-on massive diagram. Like, imagine somebody filling up a chalkboard that was the entire length of the wall and ceiling, like you might see in a movie about some sort of college presentation where the professor's just madly drawing out and filling up an entire chalkboard. It was kind of like that, but a blueprint of why we're here, how we exist, what the meaning of life is. And the entire time I was being shown this, I was just paralyzed, tears running down my face. My friend probably didn't even notice what was going on because I was just, we're just sitting in the car. It was the middle of the night. He couldn't see me. I couldn't express to him what was happening while it was happening. But I was having this vision, and while I was having this vision, there was an auditory component of a man, a very father-like figure, and he was laughing at me, like, not in a mocking way, but in a way that conveyed to me that, one, I wasn't going to remember any of this. Two, that it was so far above my head that it was overloading my system in a way that was comical to him, and three, that it was absolute truth. And now it was laughing at me like it knew I would never be able to remember or process any of this information in a meaningful way. But up until that point, I was a young man and I'd been asking for the answers. I've always been a truth seeker. The big truths, not the human surface level crap. I'm talking about the big universal why we're here kind of stuff. And I've been asking for that as long as I can remember consciousness itself as a young man. And I feel like at this point in my life, whatever the power is out there granted me my wish, and it was laughing at me the whole time, like a father would laugh at its child, by giving him like an encyclopedia to a 2-year-old who was demanding it, right? There was no way I would be able to use the information. There was no way I'd be able to truly comprehend the information, even though I think I understood what the meaning was at the time. I knew at the moment it was happening that I'd never really be able to hold on to this truth because it was so far beyond me and so epically proportioned. I don't know how else to describe it. That it was beyond the human realm, but it was the code of existence and the why and the how. So in some ways, it was very relieving to know. In some ways, it was very inspirational, I guess you could say. But in other ways, it was so ultimately demoralizing and earth-shattering. Because here I'd been given this knowledge that I knew I wouldn't be able to retain. And I think I immediately started to resent that, not in a detrimental way, but in a way a child might resent their father for laughing at them, by giving them what they wanted, knowing it's not what they needed. And just saying that out loud, it feels like I'm kind of processing a lot of that for the first time, because that's absolutely the truth. The truth has a certain ring to it. You know, I think we BS ourselves a lot as human beings. And when the truth really does come to the surface, whether it's out of your own mouth or somebody else's, it can stop you in your tracks. But the whole reason I bring this up is because even though I was shown the truth, seeing is not necessarily believing. Even if you believe it in the moment, you might not believe the truth that you witnessed and experienced, 3 months from now or a year from now, because you change. Your thoughts and your perceptions change. You become accustomed to things so much so to a degree that you start taking them for granted. This is why I talk a lot about how I really don't envy rich people, because a lot of them, and some that I've known, have just gone insane by boredom. And I think it's something I can relate to as an American. Not that I'm a billionaire or even remotely close to it, but as an American, I have access to anything I want at any given moment. If I really want it, I can take it. If I wanted to work a little extra hard and go out and buy a Lamborghini, it might take me a couple of years, but I'd be able to pull it off. Same with a nice house. I've had nice houses. I've had nice cars. I've had great relationships. And after a while, I just get so used to things that I start taking them for granted. And I guess I'm kind of getting lost in the weeds here, but I think it's all connected. The crisis that I'm facing, because I know the truth, as far as I can understand it, is that I've become so used to the world around me that I cannot find any satisfaction in it for longer than maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Hard, soluble, I don't know if that's the right word, but hard, sustainable satisfaction. It's just so fleeting. And there was a time in my life where that was much easier to come across than it is now. And I think that might be because I was a child. It's much easier to be ignorant when you're young, and when you realize the truth, when you've eaten from the proverbial tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and you see that all of this is going away. All your relationships, all your friends, all your family, all your cars, all your houses, all your tchotchkes, all your favorite possessions, all your pets, all your favorite places, your favorite restaurants, quite possibly even all your memories, if we don't get to keep some of those. Now, some of those near-death experiences say that they get to keep their memories. Other people say that when they were on the other side, that all that was completely obliterated. And even if they had access to those memories, they were so irrelevant, almost like a dream you can't remember. And that bothers me because I want to remember this. I want to retain. I want to keep the things I've learned here, as painful as they are. And that seems like kind of a paradox. It seems like two opposing points of view. Why would you want to keep the memories of the pain and the hurt and the suffering and the boredom, along with the fun times that, fleeting as they might be? I want to remember all of it. And if I can't, I'm pretty upset about it. It seems like the least that the creator of this realm could do is help us or allow us to keep what we have to some degree, not physical items, but to keep who we are by letting us remember these hard lessons we've learned. Otherwise, it seems like, what's the point? What's the point of all the pain and all the suffering that's allowed to happen on this planet? And that's something that I feel that one day God is probably going to need to ask us for forgiveness. And I realize how blasphemous that might sound. But based on everything I've seen on this planet and how horrible it can be and all the terrible things that happen to the most innocent among us, whether it's, children being abused or dying of cancer, I've gone through this life relatively unscathed. So I don't feel like I'm worthy of demanding God's apology. But I do feel like I'm worthy of demanding God's apology for all the other things that have happened to a lot of other people. Because it's just completely unfair, the amount of pain and suffering that some of us have had to go through. And I don't understand it. Now, it's funny. I say that I've gone through life relatively unscathed. Relatively, I think, is the key term there. Because in the last 10 years, I've gone through enough stuff that would probably drive some people to the loony bin. And I'm not going to get into it here. But it has to do with witnessing others around me suffer. And in that, I've suffered quite a bit because of it. And I don't know, maybe I do want God to ask me for my forgiveness someday. At least it's an honest statement of how I feel right now. I might not feel that way when I cross over and meet the Creator someday. Hopefully that's what happens. But I resent all the pain and suffering that's happened here, especially if we're not going to learn any grand lesson from it, if we're not going to be able to retain any of that information, if this is all just vanity, like the writer of Ecclesiastes said, then it seems like an awful waste of time. And if it is, yeah, I'm a bit resentful for being here. Not that I don't enjoy my life, not that I don't believe that finding those fleeting moments of enjoyment aren't important. But I think there is a chance that God's going to need to ask us for our forgiveness. For putting us here, for dragging us through the mud like this, for taking everything away when we die. Now, I can see how that might seem blasphemous, especially to highly religious folks who get offended by anybody questioning their beliefs. I'm really not trying to do that. I'm only trying to state how I see things from the perspective of a deist who discovered deism, about 10, 15 years ago now? I can't remember. I feel like I was shown a great truth in discovering deism, that God exists way outside of the realm of religion. And with that came the knowledge and the understanding that none of it comes with us. Maybe that's a sign that none of the pain, along with any of the joy and the pleasure, comes along. Because if this is truly a simulation and it's all just plastic, and what I'm saying to you now and all the devices I'm using to communicate to you right now go away, along with all of our friends and family and pets and toys, so maybe it's a good thing. Because with all the good will disappear all the bad. It still seems like an awful waste. An awful waste of time, an awful waste of energy. And I think that's kind of what's paralyzing about knowing this truth, that none of it really exists, is it removes the incentive to try a lot of times. And I think I resent that too. Like, why would I strive for greatness here on earth anymore? Why do I try to succeed at work? Why would I want to find a nice big house to make payments on, only just to have it disappear and go into somebody else's hands? I was in New York a couple weeks ago for work, and I had the chance to go visit the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's the largest museum in North America, and it's huge. I walked around for hours and hours and hours. There's an amazing Egyptian exhibit that took a couple hours alone, and there are wings of this building. It's like a massive. It's like the Mall of America. It's the hugest. It's one of the biggest buildings I've ever roamed in my entire lifetime, because I just walked and walked and walked and walked. And item after item, all these great things, all these artifacts from the past, stone carvings from Egypt that are thousands of years old and carved with such precision that people today struggle to know how they were made. From that to all sorts of just antiquities and Greek sculptures and anything you can imagine that an ancient, a museum that houses ancient artifacts would have. After a couple hours of walking around, it all just immediately started losing its meaning. Because I had this sudden realization that this is nothing but a giant collection of dead people's stuff. None of it got to go with them. And it immediately lost my interest. Because I realized I was walking around in a museum of plastic nothing. And it upset me because I really wanted to have a good time there. I was really excited about seeing this museum. I'd been out to New York about 5 or 6 times in the past couple of years, and every time I'd gone, it just wasn't open, or I didn't have an opportunity to see this museum. And finally, after waiting 3 or 4 years to see this place I'd had on my agenda, I got in there, enjoyed myself for a couple hours, and then immediately realized that there was nothing. There was nothing there but a collection of dead people's stuff. And I think it's a representation, a microcosm of how I feel about the world around me right now. Whether it's right or wrong or misplaced judgment, or if I'm just being negative, I really don't believe I am. I resent the fact that I was brought into this realm and it's not real. Now, maybe it's just like, on some video games, there's like a training level that you go through just to kind of teach you how things work before you go on to the real game. At best, I'm afraid that that's what this realm on Earth actually is. Because I feel like I've been stuck inside of a video game for, in a couple of days, it'll be 44 years now. And I'm kind of sick of the game, Now, don't take that the wrong way. I love my life, and in no way is this some sort of, cry for help. I'm not even remotely saying that, but it does start to feel after a while that I've been playing the same video game for a long time. There's no memory card available. This is a tired analogy, but I think it applies because it's genuinely how I feel. And I am looking forward to, either the end of the game someday or the next level. Maybe this is some sort of manifestation of my midlife crisis, which is entirely possible because I am so utterly bored with life right now that I don't know what to do. I've talked to professionals. I've talked to artificial intelligence. And I think the best advice I've had for this kind of feeling lately is just to simply embrace it, which I think is why I'm talking to you about it right now. But I think it's all tied together through deism, from knowing the truth to being shown what this world really is and trying to come to terms with it, struggling to come to terms with it, which is where I'm at right now. I have hope that I will come to terms with it. I might be 80 or 90 years old before I come to terms with it. And maybe this, intense boredom that maybe some of you are feeling out there is a way to get us ready for the next life, I'm 44 now. In another 44 years, I cannot imagine, like living to 120. No, thank you. But in another 44 years from now, I will probably be ready and willing to cross over, which is something I don't want to do now. As bored as I am with this place, I want to go out. I want to have fun. I want to move to Hawaii. I want to watch my family playing in the sand and on the beach, for as long as I can. But my clock is ticking. At best, I've got another maybe 40 40 or 50 years to live that out. So maybe the only way out of this is to act. I don't know. But I appreciate you listening. This is extremely cathartic for me. And I know I've promised in the past that I'm going to try to do more of these videos. And I can only say that the more you react and the more you comment on these videos, the more likely I am to make more of them. So let me know if any of this resonated with you. You know, let me know if I'm just absolutely full of it, because I really don't mind that kind of feedback either. I'm not afraid of it. Any feedback is good feedback. But until next time, let's do it again. But until next time, I'm Jesse Edwards. We'll catch you again soon. Bye.